Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Kristi Wells. I am the CEO and co-founder of Safe House Project. And today I am joined by Kristen Jenson. Kristen is the founder of Defend Young Minds, formerly Protect Young Minds, and the #1 best-selling author of Good Pictures, Bad Pictures series of read-aloud books, which have translations in 10 languages. She's also the executive director of Brain Defense Digital Safety Curriculum and the owner and CEO of Glen Cove Press, LLC. Kristen, thank you for joining us. We're so glad to have you on today.
It's great to be with you, Kristi.
Now, to kick things off, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about you, maybe your background, and kind of give our audience a feel of who you are.
Okay, well, I am married for quite a long time. I have 3 children, 2 daughters. One is married, has 2 grandsons. Gave me 2 grandsons. I'm very grateful for that. My other daughter is a scientist that works at a national laboratory. And so we love science at our house. I actually was not a stellar scientist, but I like to read about it and I'm interested in it. I grew up in both Wyoming and Massachusetts. So I call it kind of like a schizophrenic, cultural, very divided experience, and now I live in the West, but grew up on the East Coast. And I did not, ever think that I would be writing a book about pornography, for children. So that I did later on in life. I raised my kids and kind of launched them. And then I kind of call it a calling, came to me. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And I really meet the best people, including yourself, Kristi, in doing this work, because we are fighting something that is, really harming not only society, but children especially. And so I'm grateful that you're on the team and that we can work together to, push back on this problem and give parents some real answers and some solutions.
Absolutely. So for our listeners, we are here today to talk about pornography. We are going to make that very clear, but not just about the issue itself, but about what Kristen has really done and really, I think, blazed a path in doing so to combat pornography for those who are early age. So Kristen, talk to us. Why did you start writing books for young kids about pornography? How did you land here?
I know that well, basically I moved to a new city with my husband. He had a new job and met this woman. She had a large family, I think 9 kids at the time. And one night I was on Facebook and up pops a message from her saying, "Can we talk on the phone?" So got on the phone. I talked with her till 1:30 in the morning. And she told me this story about her 17-year-old son, her oldest son, who they had found out he was perpetrating or, molesting his younger brothers and sisters. So all the way from the 14-year-old down to the 4-year-old, and pornography was involved. And, you can kind of see how pornography, a child viewing pornography, children are so imitative, could potentially go on to just practice what they saw on, younger vulnerable children. It really, when we see how, and as mothers, we know how imitative children are,
Sure.
it makes sense that sometimes this happens. So I woke up the next morning and I just had this throbbing in my head, like that I had to find some way to warn the young children. And I got on Amazon, got on the internet trying to find a book because I was sure there was a book that I could just buy for her so that she could read it to her younger children. And, and I couldn't find anything. And then I started doing more research and I'm like, somebody needs to write a book about this. And it can't be that hard. I mean, it's pretty clear to me. But it actually took 3 years. So it was actually harder than I thought, but I kind of jump in the pool and then figure out if I can swim. That's kind of my modus operandi. So that's what I did. I'm like, oh, I'm going to write a book. And I found a friend who does watercolor painting. I'm like, will you be my illustrator? She goes, I I paint mostly landscapes, Kristen. You can do it, and I don't have any money to pay, a real illustrator. So you're going to have to be it. Anyway, turned out that I think the watercolor now in the book, that it's all kind of like watercolor paintings. And I know that that's not the in graphic design thing right now, but I just wanted it to be very soft to counter the very harshness of pornography. So
Right.
anyway, so yeah, it took 3 years and published Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It became a #1 best-selling book in its category on Amazon. And then a few years later, I had parents asking me to write one for younger kids, even like younger than 7. So my original book was like for 7 to 10, 7 to 11. But the younger book is for 3 to 6. So that's the story.
That's fantastic. And you found such an approachable way to have such a hard conversation. These are books that I've used with my children that I actually think the illustrations make it feel consistent with that, for us, what felt like normal story time, as something that it didn't feel inconsistent. And so it actually made it, I think, more approachable. So
Yeah.
I know the watercolors was an accident and it was using what resources you had, but I think that that's something that was used in a very positive way to create that conversation. But it doesn't change the fact that these are still hard conversations to have. So what are the basic messages of your book, and how do you even begin these conversations with your kids? Talk to our readers about that, or listeners.
Well, okay. Well, I'll just start saying the great thing about a book is that it helps you just begin. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, right? So it helps you have conversations. Just saying, hey, we're going to read a book. This is a very natural thing for parents to do for children with children. And there are other topics that parents cover. A body safety is one of them. Even, there's all kinds of other serious topics that parents use children's books to cover. So I would say that's one of the reasons I wrote a book that could be read aloud, a read aloud, instead of like a video or, something like that. So you asked how the book kind of unfolds. Basically, it is a mom who starts a conversation intentionally with her son. And then the father comes in at the very end to kind of add his thoughts. And so it's a story that models what I hope parents can do, which is to intentionally have these conversations and warn their children, before they are exposed. That's ideal. But even if it's not before, it's still important to begin these conversations. So in the book, there are 3 things that I believe that kids need to know. And one is a definition of pornography, an age-appropriate definition, just so they can recognize it when they see it. You don't have to give it the whole enchilada, just enough information that they can recognize it. 2, a warning, so they understand that this can be dangerous for their growing minds. And 3, a plan. So how to react, how to respond when they see, those pictures or those videos or those cartoons. And when they have when they have a definition, a warning, and a plan, then they really have a choice, because I don't believe kids have a true choice to reject pornography unless they have some education about it.
No, that's amazing. And I completely agree. I think that's got to be something they need to know, that it's not okay. Most of them inherently know something just feels off about it, but they don't know that they're to reject it. And they don't know what to do to sometimes keep themselves from seeing it, because we know how algorithms work. And once you've seen something, then it's going to continue to pop up and make itself into the forefront of your mind. I am appalled at the ways that technology it feels like a full-scale attack coming against kids to put this into those minds younger and
Yeah.
younger. We're good friends with the folks over at Fight the New Drug, and they talk a lot about the new data that's coming out about how the users on Pornhub, and I think it was something like 20% of the users under the 18 or under the age of 10. I might be off,
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
it's substantial.
so many kids. Yeah, so many kids. That was a study done by Bitdefender, which is a internet
that's right.
security company.
Uh-huh.
And they said 10% of visitors to this one major porn site, it may have been Pornhub, were 10 and under. And then if you looked at 18, just the minors, then it was 22%. So it's a lot of kids seeing a lot of porn. And if you never talk to them about it, how can we just assume that they're going to know to avoid it, or that it's bad, or, their curiosity drives them to learn about their world. And so we need to educate them, and we can, and it's not that hard. If we sometimes dread it, but when you get started, I'm sure you can, attest to this. Once you get started, it's not that hard.
Right. It's funny going into the conversations because you never know who feels more awkward, the parent or the child. And I finally started to realize that they feel a whole lot more awkward about this than we do. And that's really saying something, because, you kind of wring your hands and you think, oh gosh, how do I even say this? But, our approach is they're going to learn it from somewhere. They're going to learn about sex. Yeah. They're going to learn about their body. They're going to learn about pornography from somewhere. And I don't know what other resources and people are going to be out there informing that. And so I would rather them have that right information at the start than have incorrect information. But, growing up, I remember, my parents talking to my siblings and friends and all of this, but the point of that entering the conversation was not until somebody was older. It was almost to the point that they were 16 and going to be able to get into a car and drive to a seedy gas station to buy a Hustler magazine. I felt like that was the point that this was entering the conversation, but now it's starting much younger. So what is the best age to begin talking to a child about pornography?
Yeah. So I'll just answer that question with a question. And that is, at what age are children getting on the internet?
Oh, heavens. Earlier and earlier. My kids knew how to operate iPads before I did, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So every 3-year-old seems to be on an iPad. And as much as we hope that we've got it all, clamped down, they have friends. There are situations that I have heard of 3-year-olds seeing hardcore pornography and being so upset with it. They don't have any idea like how to deal with this. So I would say, our book is for 3 to 6-year-olds, the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior. The sooner you start the conversation, the safer they're going to be. And the sooner you start that conversation, the younger they are, the less uncomfortable they're going to be, because it's just going to be like you create that context. And it's just one more thing mom and dad are warning me about, or teaching me about the world. So if you start with a 3-year-old, it's not going to be awkward. And I've tried really hard and tested my books over and over and over with beta tester families, real families, before I put them out there. And I continually update my books so that they have, are just so comfortable and easy for parents to use to get that conversation rolling. Now, I will say this, it's never a one and done, right? You can't just say, oh, read the book, we're done, check it off. Yeah. No, that just starts the conversation. And I would definitely revisit the topic on a regular basis. But yes, start young. Safer is sooner. Do the hashtag, right? Hashtag safer. Sooner is safer. I always get this mixed up. Sooner is safer.
No, that's incredible. So you urge parents to talk to their young kids about pornography from an early age, but I got to say, there's a lot of parents that worry about telling their kids about porn, that it might make them even more curious about it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So kids are curious. They're very curious. And that's the biggest reason to begin the conversation. It's not a good reason to hold off, because you cannot control when your child is going to be exposed to pornography. And believe me, I've heard so many stories, and parents and children are caught off guard. So none of us do very well when we're caught off guard. So I say you've got two plans. One is the cross your fingers plan and hope that your child will not be exposed until, after you begin the conversation. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we all had a crystal ball and could figure that out? But we just don't. So I say the Defend Young Minds plan, which is to be proactive, to be intentional, and to become, the expert for your child on all of these questions of sex and its counterfeit, which is pornography, so that you open that conversation. They feel free and easy to come and talk to you about these topics. So really, kids are curious, but it's much better if you actually answer those questions early, give them a source that they can go to, rather than just cross your fingers, because that plan has not been working very well.
Right.
So we need to do something different, which is to give our kids a chance, educate them about the real harm that is out there so that they know what to do. And Kristi, if you don't mind, I can tell a story about that really
Absolutely.
illustrates this.
Yeah.
And I have so many, but and I have several which show that if a child is warned, when they are then confronted with pornography, they will, do what you ask them to do, especially the young children will. So one young boy, I think he was maybe 7 years old. His name is Riker. His mom read him Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. He knew the can-do plan, which was, what to do exactly, when you're confronted with pornography. He knew what it was, so he could recognize it. He was on his way home, got off the school bus with a friend. They were walking down the road. His friend stops at the mailbox and pulls out a Playboy magazine, and the kid just starts looking through it. And Riker says, that's pornography. And his friend said, what's pornography? And so he gave him the simple definition, right? And he said, it's not good for you. You can, and he kind of tried to give him a little more information from a 7-year-old about addiction. And the kid just, he shut it and went his way. Now, Riker, the thing that's so great is that he recognized it. So he didn't get pulled into it. He put up a boundary, right, for himself,
right, that
says, you know what, I'm not going to look at that stuff, even though my friends and peers might be doing that. So really, it's just better to start earlier if you can.
Absolutely.
And we have resources now to help you. So that's the good news.
No, that's so incredible, because it's so desperately needed, because as we have talked about, it's just coming against kids faster and earlier and harder than it ever has before. And it's so dangerous for their young minds. My kids will, if you ask them, what's your mom's job? They'll say, to protect our minds. And there are so many times sometimes it's, to protect our minds, but they know that is my job and that is my husband's job, and that we're fierce protectors of it, and that they can ask us anything and we'll give them the right information. But it's so critical to be, as a parent, to be that earlier barrier for your kids and protector. But it doesn't stop with pornography. Obviously, those conversations are going to continue to grow and shift. So how would conversations about pornography change as a kid becomes older and as they really do begin to learn about sex and they're hearing about it from their peers? Right. Well, how does that shift?
Yeah, I recently did a presentation about age by age recommendations for, parents. What are the basic talking points, when they're really young, and then as they get older. So, when they're really young, they just need a simple, like I said, definition, warning, and a plan. And for the junior book, it's like turn, run, and tell. And then the older book, the book for older kids, is a can-do plan. So they understand what to do, who to tell, and then how to keep those images from popping back up in their minds. So that's all covered in that book. And so these are digital defense skills that kids need to have because they live in a digital world that, sometimes can be pretty daunting. But then as they get a little older and they learn about sex, which we recommend, by 7, your kids understand some of this, because otherwise they're, it's, you want to get in there first with the positive, idealized version of sex and what it's for and all of that. And then, as they grow up and learn more about sex, you can teach them that pornography is the counterfeit, the exact opposite of what an ideal or healthy sexual relationship would look like. Pornography is the exact opposite. And you don't want to teach your mind that model, right? You want a much better model, which is another reason we need to start earlier talking to our children about sex. So, and then also you can get into, as they get, 10, 11, 12, they start seeing the world. They kind of can understand some of these things, that pornography can be used to groom children for, sexual abuse, for sex trafficking, that pornography is something that is made. It's so linked to sex trafficking, so that when you are rejecting pornography, you're also rejecting all of, sexual exploitation that comes with it.
Right.
So you can mature these discussions, and should, because I've heard from several people that the thing that finally got them to stop looking at pornography was really their feelings about, the justice of, is it fair? And, as kids get into their they want to have a fair world, right? They want it to be fair, and it's not fair. Pornography is not fair. And anyway, so you can get into these more layered topics that are more serious, but they need to know this, so that they have 101 reasons not to look at pornography, not to get themselves involved in it. They need continual conversations, continual good arguments against it. And we write about that a lot on Defend Young Minds in our articles, to really help arm parents with these counter arguments.
That's incredible. Now, a lot of parents feel like they've checked the block. They've put filters on their family computers, filters on iPads, but those might not offer the best protection. How are kids getting exposed to internet pornography today? How are you seeing that happen?
I would say it's through devices, smartphones,
Sure.
and iPads, games.
Yes.
I'm just writing ads on games. Anytime, anywhere there's an internet connection, you can get to porn. Even I learned that kids have figured out that, let's say you have taken the browsers off of the iPad, but let's say you have Google Maps on there. Did you know that if you hover over a city where like, for example, I believe it's Quebec. Is it Toronto or Quebec? I can't believe it. Anyway, it's a major city in Canada where Pornhub is located. Now, and kids share this information, you can actually hover over there. It'll bring up that address, whatever, and a link. So kids can get on Pornhub via Google Maps. I mean, who knew this? But it's amazing the ways that they're very ingenious if they want to, right? So what you have to try to do is persuade them not to want that thing, right? You need to give them information. So many kids go to porn because their parents haven't talked to them about sex. So it's the easiest way for them to find out about sex, right? It's so available, and it's free, and they can do it in the, if they can take a device into their room, then they've got their privacy. So I think that we need to really persuade children about this topic and not just lay down the law. That will only go so far.
Right.
I think persuasion and education is really the most powerful way we can help our children avoid the pitfalls of pornography in their lives.
Absolutely. That makes me think of some of the early drug intervention courses that came about in the 90s, where, they could tell you all day long that drugs were bad, but it was seeing some of the programs that were being implemented in first, second, third grade. I remember seeing this come out when I was a kid in California. One of them was called Project Self-Esteem. And it was getting to the root of the problem and helping the kids transfer that external knowledge to their own internal belief, that they were trying to get to those earlier convictions and have that be part of their own moral identity. And so I absolutely agree. It can't just be the pressure from the outside for the parent. It has the kids have to have that information to almost absorb that as their own moral identity, which, as I mentioned, that's one of the things that we started to see with our kids. One of my kiddos was exposed to porn. And once he actually began to understand that connection between what I do combating trafficking, and specifically combating child trafficking, and the images that he had seen, and realizing that they were part of a problem, absorbed as part of his moral identity, that no, this is what we fight as a family. And because of that, this is not something that I stand for. And now he's become an ardent defender against it with his friends. And so there was a little boy who told a girl in our neighborhood that she could make money by posting pictures of herself naked. And I saw my son come out of the corner of my eye before I could even get to this kid addressing it. And so it can also be a very positive, encouraging thing when they start to absorb that and really be defenders of other individuals.
Yes.
But
that's wonderful.
But, there are I feel like there's that controversy around people going, pornography is fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's not addictive. It's your own personal time. It doesn't impact what happens in your real life. But we know that that's not true. So talk to me about the addiction side of this. Is pornography, is it the same chemical addiction as you see in maybe drugs or alcohol?
Right. Well, it definitely activates the same addictive processes in the brain. So with drugs, like for alcohol, what you're doing is you're affecting the dopamine and you're affecting the reward system in the brain. And with pornography, it's just coming in through your eyes, but it's still activating the dopamine, right? So no matter what it is, whether it's a substance and we know that people can get addicted to gambling,
sure,
right? That's been officially recognized. We know that people can get addicted to spending money and shopping and I remember when I was younger and I had my little kids, and I go to Target, spend $100 and get a high. And once I realized that I was actually getting kind of a high from spending money at Target, I stopped. Okay, I've got to be really careful about this. So it starts that whole addiction process, whether it's drugs, whether it's an experience, it starts the whole addictive process. There are 40 years of science, good science, that shows that pornography can and is an addiction. And if you talk to people that are addicted to pornography, they sure feel addicted. It's sure difficult. In fact, I've seen people say, I was addicted to drugs and alcohol and pornography, and I got rid of the drugs and I got rid of the alcohol. The pornography was the hardest to overcome. And why? It's readily available everywhere from every device. Right. And so, if you were a meth addict and you could go to your smartphone and get a hit of meth 24/7 for free, and nobody would know about it. You didn't have to meet somebody on the street corner or whatever, right. Would you have a problem overcoming that habit? Yes, you would. You would have a problem. So Yes. And there are MRI studies that show that not only the reward center in the brain is lit up, just like, an alcoholic when they see alcohol, or a drug addict when they see their drug of choice. When a porn addict sees pornography, their brain has become sensitized to it, and it lights up. The reward center lights up. Also, they found that with addictions, the addiction is basically your thinking brain is that prefrontal cortex, right? And that's the part of the brain that helps us put the brakes on our actions, think of the consequences, make plans, kind of executive functioning. But that's the part of the brain that's damaged with an addiction. And I call it the feeling or instinctive, part of the brain that is the one that gets more control. And you can see this actually happening in an MRI. So if you go do MRI studies of people that have addictions to alcohol or heroin or whatever drug, and then you do the same thing with porn addicts or people with a porn addiction, you'll see the same shrinkage in the prefrontal cortex, in the, that thinking part of the brain. There's actual physical shrinkage. Now, you can turn this around. So I don't want people to think that their brain is shrunk forever. Mm-hmm. But when you start to regain control, get yourself in, recovery program and regain control and use, how they say, use it or lose it.
Right.
When you start to use those brakes, they will get stronger like a muscle. So we talk about that in Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Junior. I'm sorry. We talk about that in Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Porn Proofing Today's Young Kids, that thinking brain is like a muscle. And when you exercise it by basically using your self-discipline, mm-hmm. right, then you can overcome these things. Or best case is never get started. And that's right. Why in this book, we talk about addiction.
Right.
We live in, I don't know what you think, but Kristi, don't we live in such an addictive prone society?
And things that have been so normalized. I mean, the amount of hours that people spend on a phone, on social media, scrolling through social media, the number of hours that they submit to that every day is crazy. And it's become so socially acceptable. It's become normalized. It's the same thing with gaming addictions, or it's almost laughed about as, oh gosh, she's just on her phone all the time, or she's on games all the time. And the idea of addiction has become, it's almost like we become desensitized to it because there's so many things that people have become addicted to. And addressing that is so key for these kids and not just for kids. We've seen, good heavens, I've seen beautiful marriages wrecked by pornography that, most of them have been able to find their way back, but it's been a fight for the husband in most cases to really find his way back, because it was the thing. And you said it earlier, it's the addiction that exists in secret, probably more than, I won't say more than any other, but definitely more than most out there. And it's the one that tells them that it's not something that they can tell other people about, that they're the only ones experiencing this addiction. And I think that feeling of isolation is really something that holds them captive. So it's beautiful when you see somebody freed from it, but it is a wrecking ball to lives in so many ways. And so let's talk about that, because so many people think, okay, addiction's scary enough, but some people will still think that my addiction is my personal private issue. And my addiction does not impact somebody else, which anybody who has an addiction, we all know the falsities that come with that.
Believe me. Yes.
But talk about pornography and how it's harming kids in other ways, because we know that this does not live in a vacuum.
Yeah. Well, one of the ways it's harming children is that it's giving them this toxic sexual template, right? This sexual script that includes violence and degradation, right? Wouldn't it be nice? I mean, I kind of think that sex should be with someone you love, and someone that treats you with respect and loves you, and that it's a way of showing love, not just a sexual performance.
Right.
So it gives them all of these concepts about sex that are so against being able to form an intimate relationship.
Mhm.
So, that's a harm. These kids growing up, they think they're supposed to like being slapped and choked and all these other things I won't
Right.
even describe. And then also studies have been done to show that, teenage boys that look at violent pornography have 6 times the amount of risk for, sexual violence, i.e. rape. Okay. So it does. And there are like 3 different, I'm trying to think of the word for the studies, meta studies, where
Mhm.
they take a bunch of studies and pull them together to see if it still pans out. And there are 3 major meta studies that show this. So it can lead a child to become more violent and even do criminal acts. The
Mm.
other thing it can lead, and I talked about this in the beginning of this podcast, is that kids are imitative. So many children are watching porn and then wanting to imitate with other children. And what we've started to see in the last few years are kids that are acting out on other kids, and they themselves have no hands-on perpetrator, right? The perpetrator is porn.
Mm.
So, which we used to always think that, oh no, if a child acts out sexually on another child, then they were, abused
Sure.
physically by probably an adult perpetrator. But no, it's porn. Porn is getting these kids to act out on other kids, even if they've never been touched by anyone else. So those are some of the harms. And I think that, again, you can see, but here's another harm. And that is that they can be set up for being sexually active at a much younger age and much riskier sex acts. But also that, pornography, and this is one of the key tools to groom a child
Absolutely.
for this. So I have a story. There was a 6-year-old boy. His mom had read him good pictures, bad pictures. So he knew how to recognize it. They were over at a friend's house for dinner. Now this friend had a basement, and they were doing a little bit of a remodeling upstairs so that they had put all their toys down at the foot of the stairs in the basement. But this basement had a little apartment and they were renting it out. So at this dinner, they said, you can go downstairs really quick, pick up a toy and come back up. Well, the 6-year-old went down. He's looking, for a toy. And this man who rents down, was a renter, came over, showed him ended up being gay porn on his phone, and said, this is really fun to do, and started to groom him and basically try to coerce him. The little boy saw what he saw, and he knew that was a bad picture, that was pornography. And he knew exactly what to do. He ran upstairs and he told his mom. And just think how much more protected that child is than a child that is caught off guard, knows nothing.
Right.
And is just like, okay, all right, you say it's fun. You look like a nice man, whatever. So our kids are safer from child abuse, child sexual abuse, if you warn them early. Pornography. And I can tell you so many other stories where this is true. And people have come up to me and said, reading your book saved my grandson from sexual abuse, and tell me this story. And it's like, wow, I didn't see that coming, to be honest, Kristi. I did not see that coming. It was only after people started telling me that this was happening that I realized the strong connection between pornography and child sexual abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that story just makes my stomach turn. But that's how I mean, just thinking about that with my kids when they were 6, just Oh gosh. But how incredible that you get to be on the protective, proactive side of combating early childhood sexual abuse and child trafficking and grooming behaviors. It's incredible. So as we come to a close, let's talk really quickly about your new curriculum, Brain Defense, Digital Safety, and Help Defend Children from Addiction, or how does this help defend children from addiction and other digital dangers?
Yeah. So we created this program, Brain Defense. It's video based, it's very engaging, super easy to teach. We created it for kids ages 7 or 8 to 11 to 12, right in there, because that's the age these kids are really getting more and more involved in pornography. And that's the age we really, really need to work on. And the younger, sooner is safer, right? So, but it's not me in these videos going, wah, 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 wah. It's the brain gang, and it's these teens that are teaching all of this content to the kids, and they love the brain gang. We've tested this out in schools across the country and in families too. And these kids love hearing from their older peers. And you mentioned the DARE program actually earlier,
Yeah.
the drug. And we learned a lot from all of the prevention science that came out of studying that program, because what they did is they went back and they studied it and they found out, it wasn't working as well as they thought. And they changed it and found out what does work. And so we used all of that science and that methodology for brain defense. So not only do kids, what's that?
So that's amazing.
Yeah, they learn. So in brain defense, you learn healthy tech habits, screen time limiting. So it's not you that's always saying this. It's nice to have some help from other people. And the more these kids hear it from other, from other people, maybe, from their parents, from their teachers, from their grandparents, from maybe faith leaders, and from other teens. And so this brain gang is just so impactful on these kids. So it's like an open and go curriculum, super easy. And we're just getting so many reports from parents, especially, that love it, and teachers too, because it just makes it easy to teach this stuff. So we do have a porn piece in there, where we teach about the can-do plan. And then we also have digital citizenship, anti-bullying, all these kinds of digital topics that kids are going to face. So yeah, check it out at braindefense.org or go to Protect Young. You have to edit that part out. Go to defendyoungminds.com, and under curriculum, you can see it and see some videos about it. And we're just so excited about it. It's fun. And we got a comedy writer, like Emmy nominated comedy writer that used to write for like children's programming to do the scripts for us. So he put in all of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. So talk really quickly, besides your books, what other resources have you created to help parents, and where can they go to find these?
Yeah. So go to defendyoungminds.com, and we have guides. Some of them are free that you can get. One of the free ones that's very, popular is How Do I Talk to My Child About Pornography? And then there's another one that is so helpful, and I wish every parent would get it. It's called, My Kid Saw Porn, Now What? And it prepares you for how to react when this situation arises. It's jam-packed with the SMART plan and all this information from therapists. And anyway, I don't know of any other book out there that's quite like this. So check that out. So go to the guides and you can see our books. I just wrote a book for therapists that are using good pictures, bad pictures in their therapy in clinical settings. It's also for educators, and it's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Guidebook for Professionals. So that's hot off the press. Check that out if you're an educator or a therapist. And we just putting out so much content on our blog, articles, helping with the latest threats, techniques, parenting advice around this topic. So we
That's
encourage
amazing.
everyone to, yeah. And join us on social media too. We have a very engaged audience on Instagram and Facebook. So join us there, and Twitter, obviously.
Yes. Well, those are all incredible ways that people can continue to grow in their knowledge of this issue, learn how they can support their kids and protect their kids and be part of that solution. So, Kristen, thank you for the work that you do as a parent, as somebody who is in the anti-trafficking industry. It is vital to protect the next generation, and protect them against not only becoming victims, but becoming predators. So you are truly on the forefront of helping eradicate human trafficking in America. So thank you for the work that you do. And guys, go on, check out defendyoungminds.com, check out all of the resources, deploy the resources in your home. Information is only as good as how much you use it. So make sure you're using this, make sure you're doing this with your kids. I can tell you from personal experience, I did not start soon enough. And so that is something that we all hate to think about, but it is so vital. We have the ability to step in to protect our kids, to protect their minds. That is our job. So Kristen, thank you for joining us, and go on and check out defendyoungminds.com.
Thank you so much, Kristi.